Airports, right. They really can test your patience, especially when you're landing somewhere like Kathmandu. Vibrant, exciting, but maybe a little unpredictable.
Kathmandu's airport, Tribhuvan International, is almost an attraction itself. It kind of reflects that Nepali organized chaos. In a charming way, of course.
Today we've got David Ways with us. He's a seasoned traveler, knows Nepal inside and out. Literally, he wrote a guidebook.
He really has. And he's going to walk us through arriving and departing at Kathmandu's airport so you can spend less time stressing and more time enjoying your trip.
You've just landed, ears are probably still popping, ready for all the sights and sounds of Nepal. But first, you gotta conquer the airport. I've heard it's quite the experience.
David doesn't sugarcoat it. Forget peaceful incense and all that. It's a sensory overload. Sounds, sights, and a bit of a scramble. He even compares baggage claim to a rugby scrum.
Oh, wow. So you really do have to fight for your bags. What if I'm not exactly built for rugby?
Well, David says vigilance is key. Stay focused at the baggage carousel. Grab your bags quickly when they appear. Don't be afraid to, politely assert yourself if someone gets too close.
So be prepared, be present, and don't back down. Okay, luggage is safe. What's next on this airport obstacle course?
Visas. They've got those electronic kiosks, but they're notorious for not working. David learned that the hard way.
Classic, right? Technology always fails when you need it most.
He strongly suggests getting that visa barcode online before you even leave home.
Gotcha. So visa sorted, luggage wrestled from the scrum.
Yeah.
What about money? Gotta get some local currency.
That's where it gets interesting. Airport 4X counter, not great rates, plus they've got this annoying $50 minimum exchange.
All right, so what's the workaround? How do we avoid those awful exchange rates?
David's a clever one. He says, exchange just a tiny bit at the airport, enough for a taxi, immediate stuff.
Right, get the essentials.
Then once you're in Thamel, the tourist hub, exchange the rest there. Way better rates.
Thamel. It's like a traveler's paradise, right? Shops, restaurants, culture, and apparently good money exchange too. Okay, so we've got visas, luggage, a little cash. How do we stay connected? Can't explore Nepal without maps, travel apps. Got to get those Instagram stories.
You're telling me. Staying connected is essential these days. There are Ncell and NTC kiosks at the airport for SIM cards.
Tempting. But is there a catch?
Those tourist SIM packages. Not the best deal, David says.
So what does a savvy traveler like David do?
He gets a regular local SIM and then a data package on top of that. Much cheaper than those fancy tourist ones. He did mention eSIMs are slowly becoming a thing in Nepal, but not easily available at the airport yet.
Good to know. All right, so we're connected, funded, and the luggage is safe. Final boss, Kathmandu taxis. Can only imagine what that's like.
It's definitely something else. The official taxi booth, they'll try to hit you with 1,000 rupees or more to get to Thamel.
Ouch. That's a bit steep. But I bet David has a trick up his sleeve. He seems like a master negotiator. How do we tame these Kathmandu taxis?
Confidence, a little persistence, and some good old-fashioned haggling. David has gotten taxis for as low as 400, 600 rupees.
Wow, that's less than half price. What's the magic formula? Secret handshake.
It's all about communication. Make sure you confirm the price, the destination, multiple times. Be firm but polite, And watch out for the friend trap.
Friend trap? What's that?
Oh, some drivers will try to squeeze extra passengers in.
Yeah.
And then up the price on you.
So be clear, be firm. Don't be afraid to walk away if the price isn't right.
You got it. Once you're in that taxi at a fair price, breathe a sigh of relief. You've officially survived the arrival gauntlet.
But wait, the adventure isn't over yet. There's still the departure side. And I hear there are pen thieves involved.
Oh, now I'm intrigued, AD terrified.
You should be. Leaving Kathmandu's airport has its own challenges. And those pen thieves are just the beginning. David's got some wild stories and tips for departures, but we'll get to that after this break. Stay tuned, folks. Things are about to get even more interesting.
So yeah, leaving Kathmandu's airport, it's its own thing, like a final test before you say goodbye to Nepal.
You mentioned pen thieves. Got to hear more about that. What other surprises should we expect on the departure side?
All right, before we get to the pens, David really stresses being prepared, before you even head to the airport. Double check that baggage allowance the day before. Make sure it's printed clearly on your ticket.
Makes sense, especially if you picked up some souvenirs. I can imagine those singing bowls get heavy.
Oh, yeah. And here's a tip that might seem old school. Print out your plane ticket, even if you've got an e-ticket.
So don't rely on technology completely. Why is that?
David's learned the hard way. Systems crash, internet's spotty.
Yeah.
Having that paper ticket, it can be a lifesaver.
Love that. Always have a backup. especially when traveling. So
Yeah.
bags weighed, tickets printed, anything else essential for the carry-on.
You might want to toss a pen in there.
Yeah.
And not for journaling your travel thoughts.
Okay, now I'm really curious. What's the deal with pens at Kathmandu Airport?
Apparently, pen thieves. Hanging around the departure card area waiting for unsuspecting tourists.
Seriously. Pen thieves. I've heard of pickpockets, but pens, that's a new one.
It's all about those little things we take for granted, right?
Speaking of unexpected, David actually had a passport mishap at the airport, but we'll get to that later.
Okay, well, I'm glad I packed a spare pen, so we're prepped. What about getting to the airport itself? Isn't Kathmandu traffic pretty crazy?
It can be, especially rush hour or if there's, a festival or a demonstration. David says arrive early, like really early.
How early are we talking?
He suggests at least 3, maybe even 4 hours before your flight. Check-in opens early, and the airport, well, it moves at its own pace.
3 to 4 hours. Wow. Sounds like Kathmandu Airport's on its own time zone.
You could say that. And another thing, strikes. Public strikes can happen, mess up transportation.
Definitely don't want to deal with that on the way to the airport. What if you get stuck in a strike?
David's got a solution. Usually there's a bus from the Moroccan embassy that'll get you there. Bit of a workaround, but good to know.
All right, so we braved the traffic, maybe even hitched a ride from the embassy. We're at the airport. What now?
Now it's the airport entry dance. Figuring out your departure gate is interesting. Signage isn't always clear. David's advice, join the longest queue.
So when in doubt, follow the crowd.
Pretty much. They usually all lead to the same security check anyway. Then, of course, there's the security line.
First security check. Of many, it sounds like.
Get your ticket and passport ready, and be prepared for a bit of a personal space invasion. They separate everyone, so different security line for each person.
No last-minute goodbyes then. Harsh. But I guess security first. Okay, goodbye said. Survive security. Finally at the check-in counter. What happens now?
Check-in's pretty standard. Find your airline, queue up, hand over documents, weigh bags, get your boarding pass and tags. The usual drill.
Okay, a moment of normalcy in all this chaos. So, check-in done. Time to hit duty-free for some souvenirs.
Actually, this is your last chance to get rid of those Nepali rupees. Airport Forex, surprisingly, has decent rates for departures.
Huh, so it's bad for arrivals, good for departures. Good to know. What happens after a money exchange?
Next is immigration. Get that final exit stamp in your passport. But as you go up that escalator to the counters, beware the pen thieves.
Right, the pen bandits. Lurking in the shadows, waiting to snatch a pen. So how do we avoid becoming victims?
Be careful. Hold on to your pen. Maybe even bring a backup just in case. You'll need it for the departure card.
Guard the pen, fill out the card, get the exit stamp. What's next in this airport obstacle course?
Security check. Round 2, and you guessed it, separate queues for men and women.
Wow, this airport really likes to separate people. Is this second security as intense as the first?
Metal detector, maybe a pat down, maybe they'll search your hand luggage. This is where those receipts for souvenirs come in handy.
Right, because a singing bowl without a receipt screams, suspicious traveler.
Exactly. So, second security conquered, goodbyes said, you're finally in the departure lounge. What do you think? Peaceful oasis? Time to relax.
I'm picturing comfy chairs, some music, maybe even charging stations.
David's description is a little different. He says, crowded, not a ton of seating, always busy.
So not exactly a spa experience.
Not quite, but here's a tip. Try to snag a spot in the corridor near the toilets. They've been renovated, surprisingly clean, you get a bit more space.
Okay, not all bad then. Clean toilets are a win.
And another thing, flight delays. They happen. And the speaker system, not always clear.
Oh, that sounds stressful. How do we stay updated on our flight?
David says watch those departure boards like a hawk and listen carefully to announcements, even if they're muffled. Also, pay attention to other passengers.
What do you mean?
He noticed whenever a staff member in uniform pops up, everyone kind of scrambles, trying to figure out if it's their flight.
So it's like a game of airport charades. Follow the uniformed staff and see where they lead.
Pretty much. Be observant, adapt to the airport's rhythm, and when they finally call your flight, get ready to hustle to the gate.
Everyone wants to escape the airport chaos. But even boarding isn't a smooth process, is it?
David talks about this thing where everyone seems to have tons of hand luggage, turns into a battle for overhead compartment space.
Air travel. It's like suitcase Tetris.
Exactly. But even with all the chaos, the delays, the pen thieves, the baggage scrum, the rush to the gate, David finds humor in it all.
That's the spirit. It's all part of the adventure, right?
Yeah.
But, we can't leave this hanging. What about David's passport and security?
All right, you ready for this? This story really sums up Kathmandu Airport. Unpredictable, to say the least.
Well, on the edge of my seat, tell me everything.
Okay, so David's going through security, shoes off, stuff in the tray, the whole deal. And get this, they give him a pat down, even though he didn't set off the metal detector.
Wait, a pat down for not beeping? That's a new one.
Right. Anything goes at this airport. So he's gathering his things, reaches for his passport and boarding pass, and the guard only hands him the boarding pass. Passport's gone.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine that feeling. The panic. They find it.
David's searching everywhere. Where's my passport? Guard says he doesn't have it. Calls for the manager, big guy, all these medals, but no help.
So stressful just listening to it.
They start suggesting these crazy ideas. Maybe he left it at the coffee shop, which he didn't even go to. Maybe it's on the other side of security.
But he just went through security.
Exactly. David's thinking missed flights, visa problems, emergency passport applications. It's a nightmare.
I can practically hear the dramatic music.
Finally, the manager, like he's had a brilliant idea, says, maybe it's in your bag.
You're kidding, right?
Nope. That's what he said. So David starts emptying his bag. Partly to humor the guy, partly just to buy himself some time to think.
Those must have been the longest few minutes ever.
And then, as he's pulling things out, there it is. His passport tucked inside his bag.
What? But how did it get in his bag?
Remember that bonus's pat down, the guard helping him repack? David thinks the guard must have slipped it in there. Maybe by accident, maybe, who knows, but the relief must have been incredible.
Talk about dodging a bullet. So, passport crisis averted. He gets to the lounge, finally on the plane. What's his final verdict on Kathmandu Airport?
He says, chaotic, unpredictable, but yeah, definitely unforgettable. He says it, IS getting better slowly. Toilets flush, hallways are cleaner, baby steps.
At least it's moving in the right direction.
And even with all the craziness, he finds it kind of charming, like a weird, chaotic welcome to this country full of surprises.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? Should we all be bracing for airport mayhem?
I think it's more about being prepared. Pack your patience, your sense of humor, maybe some extra pens, just in case.
And definitely check out David's website, The Longest Way Home, or his guidebooks. He's got all the info you need to navigate Nepal, from the airport to the mountains and beyond.
Absolutely. His insights are gold, especially for first-timers.
Kathmandu Airport might be a trial by fire, but hey, that's part of the adventure, right? Kind of a reflection of Nepal itself. A little chaotic, a little unpredictable, but ultimately rewarding.
Well said. So to our listeners, embrace the unexpected, stay sharp, and get ready for an amazing journey. Kathmandu Airport's just the beginning.